There is panic and hysteria in the swamps. Ukraine is launching the top-secret Freya system. This is our own impenetrable Patriot equivalent, created together with Europe. But this is just the beginning. In Paris, more than 10 of the world's strongest countries have delivered their verdict to Putin. A final sentence. Macron has announced a new chapter in the war, and real chaos has already begun in the Kremlin. Now Ukraine is receiving ironclad security guarantees, armor, billions of euros, and the latest aircraft that make Russian generals' blood run cold. Could this be the very turning point that will force the enemy to surrender and beg for peace? Watch the video until the end. There you'll find all the hottest details and statements. And before we begin, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Ukraine, together with 8 European partners, is creating its own high-tech ballistic missile defense system called Freya. Shas. The developer is our company Firepoint, which has already gained fame for its FP-1 and FP-2 strike drones and the Flamingo cruise missile. The task from the president is clear and ambitious: to create an analog of the American Patriot system, which will be just as effective against ballistic missiles, but will be mass-produced and significantly cheaper. The numbers here are simply astounding. A single Patriot system costs over $2 billion, and each missile for it costs between $4 and $5 million. Our FP-7X interceptor missile, which will form the basis of Freya, will cost about $700,000 per launch. That means we get reliable protection at almost 7 times less cost. Cheaper? However, there is one crucial nuance that Zelensky specifically emphasized. Ukrainian engineers are capable of assembling such a system on their own, but the whole problem is time. On our own, it would take us years. But if European leaders involve their factories, technologies, and companies to support Freya, then, according to the president, it will take off in the near future. So it turns out that the speed at which our own anti-ballistic shield appears in the sky depends not on hardware or blueprints, but solely on the political courage of our allies. It is precisely for the sake of this fateful decision that the leaders gathered in Paris. Why does this issue not tolerate any delay? Because we have a critical shortage. According to Ministry of Defense statistics for June, our air defense is shooting down a record 89% of all aerial targets. But when it comes to ballistic missiles, interception effectiveness drops to 40%. There is a catastrophic shortage of Patriots, the waiting list for new deliveries is scheduled years in advance, and production is severely limited. So European leaders gathered in Paris with one specific goal: to launch a new anti-ballistic coalition.
Ukraine has very urgent needs, especially when it comes to anti-ballistic defense. And this is exactly what our main contribution is aimed at and focused on. But now we have also decided among ourselves to create a new coalition, an integrated anti-ballistic defense coalition, which brings together 8 countries. This will help very concretely to advance and strengthen Ukraine's anti-ballistic defense by providing what is necessary, what is lacking. We are also offering opportunities for new licensed production, in particular. Very good. In this context, we also welcome Trump's decision to grant licenses for Patriot interceptor missiles. We have also decided to license our own missiles and to create a pool of our capabilities and expertise in order to develop new anti-ballistic capabilities. Precisely in this. This is exactly where the flagship project Freya operates, which will bring together many manufacturers, and this will be able to create additional supply, both for us and for Ukraine.
For the French leader, this is above all a large-scale political decision by 8 states to join forces. However, for us, this is not at all abstract diplomacy. At the round table, this is an issue whose cost we measure every day in human lives.
Which can become one of our joint, powerful contributions to the protection of life, strengthening Europe and enhancing Europe's global capabilities to prevent conflicts. You all see what a threat ballistic missiles currently pose in Russia's war against Ukraine. It is precisely ballistic strikes that have become Russia's last resort. Truly, their final means to prolong this bloody war. Throughout all the years of the full-scale war, Putin has been trying to break us. To break each and every one of us, Ukrainians, our motivation and spirit, to break the spirit of our people. It is now less common in Ukraine that we lack missiles to shoot down ballistic threats. This is a fact, and it is the truth. That is why we have launched a new anti-ballistic program, which includes coordination at the political, governmental, and industrial levels. and which can provide a mass anti-ballistic weapon system. We have named this program FRE. Today, the first founding meeting of the anti-ballistic coalition took place.
The president's words are fully confirmed by military analysts as well. Moreover, experts view this event much more broadly than just the appearance of a new weapon in the armed forces of Ukraine.
Honestly, it's very interesting. It was a meeting of a coalition of the willing and a truly multidimensional one at that. Because, as you may recall, this coalition was originally planned specifically to provide a peacekeeping contingent so that it could be deployed along the line of demarcation after achieving a tangible ceasefire in the Russian-Ukrainian war. And undoubtedly, both we, the country, and the coalition of the willing, well, European countries accordingly, must be prepared for such a scenario, because as we have discussed more than once, and in principle, we've heard this both from Zelensky and from the leadership, from President's chief Kirilo Budanov and from European leaders as well, regarding the fact that there is currently a certain window of opportunity to force Putin and accordingly the Russian Federation towards peace. Ukraine is now actively working on this through long-range sanctions. Likewise, our partners, both European and the US, are working on a new sanctions package being prepared by the US and Europeans. And precisely the meeting of the coalition of the willing and the creation of an integrated coalition of anti-ballistic systems is one of those elements of pressure on Putin.
It turns out that Freya is not just a story about the security of Ukrainian skies. This is a global step towards Europe shedding its dependence on American weapon stockpiles and for Putin to be left with no tools at all to intimidate the world. However, the anti-ballistic program is only part of the major decisions. On this day, on July 14th, the 15th meeting of the coalition took place in Paris, with the number of participants growing since its first gathering in February 2025, which was also held in the French capital. This time, representatives from 40 countries gathered at the table, including Moldova and North Macedonia, who participated for the first time. It is very symbolic that this meeting took place immediately after the G7 summit in Evian and the NATO meeting in Ankara. For the third time in just a few weeks, the West is clearly and loudly demonstrating to the Kremlin. There is no fatigue from the war, nor will there be any. Macron opened the meeting with a statement that the balance of power on the front has finally shifted and not in Russia's favor.
This is part of a new chapter, a new momentum that strengthens the dual dynamic. First, the dynamic in the military sphere, since Ukraine has largely regained the initiative. It successfully endured and survived the harsh cold winter and is now steadily moving forward and gaining ground. While for Russia, significant challenges and obstacles are rapidly accumulating on both the military and economic fronts. The next stage is to move towards negotiations in order to strengthen the chances for a lasting peace. Already in Evian, we managed to bring the positions of the allies closer together, and then in Ankara as well, and at the European Council. We reinforced this dynamic, particularly at the NATO summit in Ankara. We were able to make a joint diagnosis. Time is not on Russia's side, and it cannot hope to achieve its goals. Also, these consequences must be turned into collective actions and force it to return to negotiations. Today, I see 4 directions for myself. First of all, we are determined to strengthen our position, to move towards a ceasefire and the establishment of a just and lasting peace. And
the statements about a joint diagnosis are not just pretty words for the press. There is enormous money behind them. At the summit in Ankara, the allies firmly confirmed that they are allocating 70 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine for 2026. And already in Paris, these plans turned into concrete details of deliveries.
second, we are determined to support Ukraine more decisively in the long term. This moment of coalition is precisely the moment to accelerate the commitments we have made in recent months. And the financial support that was allocated 90 billion euros by the European Union. Thank you to the Prime Minister, who also supported us, plus the first payments. This is also military support. And so at the beginning of today's first half of the day, we were able to establish a roadmap. And we announced it Now, these intentions that we signed on November 17th of last year, we were able to make them more concrete by confirming the first batches regarding air defense, as well as regarding the modernization and acquisition by Ukraine. Assault aircraft Rafale planes, with the first aircraft expected to fly in Ukrainian skies in 2028 to 2029. That is additional radars, additional missiles, and we have also added licensing. This concerns the Aster 30, the Scalp missiles, and the 2 SM bombs.
An incredible 90 billion euros from the European Union, the first fighter jets. Rafale jets in our skies in just 2 to 3 years, and official licenses for the production of advanced French missiles. Directly in Ukraine. These are not just plans for the future, but documents that have been signed and are ready for implementation. At the same time as providing weapons, the Allies struck another painful spot for the Kremlin. They increased economic pressure on Russia.
And for Russia, on the contrary, things continue to get worse. Economic difficulties, and we are ready to intensify them regarding the pressure we intend to increase. Thanks to sanctions and to strengthening them against Russia, and thanks to the fight against the Shadow Fleet, we now intend to introduce the 21st package of sanctions, in which we want to reinforce and fight especially against those who circumvent the sanctions, and we are very grateful to our British partners who coordinate everything with us and with the Europeans. We also welcome the decision of the American administration not to extend the exemption regime for sales of hydrocarbons to Russia, that is, the termination of this temporary measure. And I would also like to mention the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who in recent years played a very active leading role in defending the values of the transatlantic community and supporting Ukraine. And this is our joint, coordinated action by all allies, sanctions plus the fight against the Shadow Fleet. For France in particular, this is already the 5th operation to intercept ships since the beginning of this year.
The new 21st package of restrictions, a total hunt for Shadow Fleet tankers, and the United States' refusal to make concessions for Russian fuel. All of this sounds very powerful and decisive, although it is worth noting that the head of European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas, has already stated that there is still no consensus on this package in the EU. In other words, the loud statements in Paris are somewhat ahead of the actual votes in Brussels. However, the most important point for Ukraine's future concerned ironclad security guarantees in the event of a ceasefire. Here, the leaders avoided vague wording and built a clear defense architecture which stands on 3 powerful pillars.
The first pillar of this coalition is support for the armed forces. The second pillar is support, namely the direct deployment of a multilateral contingent that will be stationed in Ukraine after the ceasefire, at sea, in the air, on land, and this alliance will have a purely defensive purpose. It will not be a mechanism for monitoring the ceasefire, but rather it will serve as a demonstration of guarantees to ensure the irreversibility of the cessation of hostilities. We will guarantee these security assurances, and the safe restoration of air and sea connections will be a component of these guarantees. Thirdly, we also want to take measures to prevent further attacks from Russia and to respond in the event that Russia decides to attack again.
For Zelensky, these guarantees are not some abstraction but a continuation of a concrete and effective document signed back when he was Prime Minister. Keir Starmer.
I would like to thank you for our productive meeting today and for the concrete results. Important results. It is very important that we have such an atmosphere. All the allies all together. We discussed this today. This is very important for supporting Ukraine and for the security of all of Europe. I'm glad to see you here. Basically, Emmanuel said it. We all support Emmanuel's words of respect. His words about the attitude toward you, respect for you personally and for your people. And I want to say that today you noted that this is your last coalition of the willing. I am grateful for your consistent position. It was during your premiership that the memorandum involving our countries on the deployment of the contingent was signed. And that is an absolute fact. Within the framework of the coalition of the willing, decisive steps were taken to guarantee security and ensure stability after the end of this war. Decisive steps were also taken to strengthen all of us together in Europe.
In other words, we are not talking about yet another set of papers for the sake of reassurance, but about the fact that the existing agreements are finally gaining real military muscle. International contingents will enter our territories, ports, and airspace immediately after the fighting stops. But the most striking thing at this meeting was not even the numbers, but the uncompromising tone with which the leaders firmly rejected even the possibility of capitulation.
Now he is planning an operation to prepare for the deployment of multinational forces in Ukraine. There will be maneuvers in the coming months. The General Staffs presented us with this plan for the maneuvers. These maneuvers will take place in Ukraine's neighboring countries. And this precisely demonstrates that we have a plan, that we are preparing, that we are ready, determined, and reliable. Allow me to also state clearly, supporting Ukraine is an investment in our own security. Those who think that this war will stop at Ukraine's borders if we give in or look for some way out or try to appease the aggressor are mistaken. The history of our continent has taught us exactly what a heavy price is paid by those who capitulate to aggression. We will not make that mistake again. I want to address Europeans directly. What we are building in Ukraine, we are building not only for Ukraine. We have increased military support for Ukraine in Ankara. Now, a total of 260 billion has already been allocated. A total of 26 billion. And now I also wanted to confirm that and the United Kingdom will also participate in the 90 billion euro initiative that the European Union has launched in Ukraine in order to provide Ukraine with additional financial opportunities and ensure predictability in defense planning. This also concerns the creation of a new anti-ballistic coalition. This is about both the university and us. We see today, under the leadership of our friend President Zelensky, an entirely unprecedented situation is now beginning to unfold in Ukraine. This is an illegal and unprovoked act of aggression. Today it can be observed and stated with confidence that Ukraine is actively organizing and mounting a progressively more formidable and serious resistance to this unprovoked and ongoing military aggression. But each and every single day that this aggression continues means thank you. Peaceful Ukrainian people are dying under the bombs. This has been happening every day since the aggression of February 2022. And that is why, with each passing day, we must strengthen our support for Ukraine in order to reinforce air defense and missile defense for Ukraine so that they are up to the task. We must strengthen our own production capabilities and support innovation in Ukraine. Secondly, we must put more pressure on Russia, particularly by advancing the strengthening of sanctions. Today, at the level of the European Union, the first package of cyber sanctions was introduced, and we will be able to further intensify this pressure against criminal groups engaged in cybercrime. And today we see, and today Putin knows very well, that all his demands that he puts forward to Ukraine will not work. Ukraine will never agree to this. That is why we all must contribute to ensuring that we move toward a ceasefire within more solid and clear frameworks. It is precisely in the current situation and only on such a stable foundation that negotiations can begin with guarantees, with the provision of guarantees, with the payment of reparations, and with assurances of lasting peace for all of us. He understands his vulnerabilities, and of course he will try to put pressure on us from his side. Furthermore, we can certainly anticipate the possibility of another significant escalation in terms of sophisticated hybrid warfare tactics. We have already witnessed those aggressive attacks that specifically aim to disrupt the critical power supply infrastructure across Poland.
The allies in Paris not only expressed solidarity, they openly acknowledged that Russia will continue to exert pressure using insidious hybrid methods, and we need to prepare for this challenge in advance. That is why a separate part of the conversation focused on purely practical preparations, both for the possible deployment of troops and for the upcoming winter cold.
We had an extremely productive and successful meeting today. When I take a moment to recall the very first meetings of this group that we held in Paris and in London back at the beginning of the year 2025, I must say that I am truly proud of the outstanding progress and the path we have taken. We have a clear plan that we have developed regarding the deployment of multinational forces in Ukraine. 25 nations are taking part in this, and they are ready. Literally in just a few days, peace will come, a ceasefire.
At the same time, the leaders moved on to a practical yet critically important topic: how to get through the coming winter.
There were 40 participants today. Moldova and North Macedonia joined the coalition. We welcome this decision. Today, many said that thanks to our soldiers and our operations, the situation is now unique, and our entirely justified pressure on Russia is indeed significant. We need to keep up the pressure even more. There should be more cooperation in Europe. We need to start preparing for winter right now. Today, we discussed what is needed to prepare the energy sector. We are counting heavily on the support of our partners. Today, all members of the coalition have essentially agreed with this. Thank you to everyone who acts in this way.
The expansion of the coalition to 40 countries and the launch of preparations for winter. Already in the middle of summer, the meeting was brought to its final stage, the most emotional part. After all, for one of the key players, this summit was the last in their position. In a few days, Keir Starmer will hand over the powers of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to his successor.
There will be new defense packages for Ukraine at all levels. We discussed additional sanctions against Russia for this war. This week there should be the 21st package of sanctions, and the constant updating of sanctions does not allow Putin. Adapting to these sanctions creates a serious incentive for Russia to ultimately choose diplomacy. Today there was a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, a very important and productive meeting. We are not just maintaining this format. Within the coalition, we are moving toward the moment when it can be stated that peace is getting closer. It is precisely the cooperation between us, here in Europe, with America, with the President of America, and with everyone in the world who wants peace. It is our cooperation that brings the end of the war closer.
Starmer himself, as he bid farewell to the format he helped build from day one, said words that sounded like passing the baton.
I want to thank everyone on this day, all our partners. From the very first day of the coalition, I have supported Ukraine. I know that my successor, he will continue this policy. He will not back down from supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine has become our common cause for everyone in our era, a shared cause in our new era.
The next meeting of the Coalition of the Willing was decided to be held not in cozy European offices, but directly in Ukraine. This will be the first time in the entire history of this format. Which of these large-scale agreements will actually take effect in the near future will be revealed already in the fall. Whether our Freya will manage to pass the first test, and whether the 21st sanctions package, which is still stuck at the European Union level, will finally be adopted. However, Paris has sent a clear and uncompromising signal to the world. The coalition is not tired, finances and weapons are moving forward, and next time the leaders will meet on Ukrainian soil. What do you think? Is this a real turning point in the war, or just another round of loud promises? Write your thoughts in the comments. And also subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and see you in the next episodes.